Welcome back to Everything EOS, the longest running EOS podcast. We're glad you joined us again this week for another action-packed episode. Before we get started, if you haven't already, head on over to everythingeos.io. Get some of our Everything EOS merch if you want to support the show. But if you don't have the funds, maybe you don't want a shirt, you don't want a phone case or a hat or a hoodie, instead, leave a like or leave a comment. It really helps us out with the YouTube algorithm, so please be sure to do that. Zach, what do we have today?
Well, you just mentioned the merch, but I think the more exciting thing coming out of Everything EOS is the Everything EOS developer courses.
Woo, they're coming.
So close. So last week, we let you guys know how we were thinking of giving it away because obviously there was a lot of time, a lot of effort involved with developing this course. It's over 30 unique lessons and over 8 hours of video content. And if you missed it a few days ago, we released, I think it's like the third course within the series of how to set up an environment on EOS Studio. So you can get a sample of the quality that you're going to get. And if you missed last week's episode, we explained how you'll be able to get the courses for free.
So we obviously asked everybody for their feedback last week on how they wanted us to give away that Everything EOS developer course for free. And the automatic option is super simple with a smart contract. You can basically send a transaction to the smart contract and verify that you voted for Cypherglass, and that will automatically unlock the course for you and give you free access. But we understand there are some people out there that maybe don't want to be forced to vote for Cypherglass. Maybe they want to vote for other BPs instead. So we have an option for them too to also get the course for free and encourage as many people to vote on the EOS mainnet as possible. So if you're out there, we'll have a web form for you. It won't be automatic, but you can vote for any other BPs you'd like, and we simply ask that you give us feedback on why you don't want to vote for Cypherglass, and because you gave us that feedback that we really appreciate, we will then unlock the course for you for free as well. So everybody has a chance to get the course for free if you don't want to pay for it, whether you're automatically getting it by voting for Cypherglass or doing it through our manual process by voting for any block producers on the EOS mainnet. So it should be great, it should be a huge release, and our goal with this ultimately is to get more people voting and more people building on EOS. So two good things.
We debated a good bit about if we should have had one that fail-safe for a way to not vote for Cypherglass, because that shouldn't be like a mandatory thing. We just want feedback and want to know why. Rob does so much, and with Everything EOS, we do so much, and we just kind of want feedback because obviously we care what the community thinks. But we debated on if there should be a minimum amount of tokens to vote. And we threw around a few numbers, but at the end of the day, the minimum will be 1 EOS token in your account. So if you want to do the automated way through the smart contract, you just have to have 1 EOS in your account, and you just have to sign a transaction to show us that you're voting for block producers. We encourage you to vote for as many block producers as you feel comfortable and that you are comfortable with the people in the company behind that. But if you're not, we highly discourage that you're only voting for Cypherglass. If that's what you're planning to do, we actually recommend you use a proxy service because if you're not using a proxy, you should, because a lot of people don't have time to research as many block producers as maybe they want to. 30 block producers, to really know and understand 30 means that you probably had to research at least 50 of them. And there's at least 50 good ones too, so it's really hard to know who to decide. Which kind of brings me to this cool smart proxy that came out today. I just saw it on Twitter before we started recording here. EOSRex.io, they put out this proxy tool where basically it has a list of 49 block producers, and the tool like automatically rotates through them so that if you're staking to this proxy, the smart proxy from EOS Rex, and I don't know if it's active on the main net or anything yet, but it basically is constantly rotating your votes, whereas most other proxies, which some of the ones we could just recommend, Freedom Proxy, Brock Pierce 1, Colin T. Crypto, Investing with a Difference, those are all great proxies. EOS Luke Stokes, just don't leave anyone out, but basically they usually change their votes like what, once every month or so?
Right. Yeah, and just so you know, EOSRex.io is actually live on the mainnet right now. So EOSRex.io, the website where you can go and test out Rex on the beta, and soon actually use Rex on the mainnet is where you'll do it. But if you want to proxy your vote, you can proxy it to just EOSRex.io. That's their proxy account on mainnet as well.
So I recommended all of those proxies. I recommend all of those, and then I'm sure I left some out, but I just wanted to come out here first everything EOS will have a proxy due to popular demand in the next couple of weeks. We're trying to determine how we want to do our votes. We're thinking about setting up a multi-sig with some other prominent community members that would help with this voting. So just keep an eye out for that. We'll have more details in the next couple weeks. So stay tuned for more information about the Everything EOS proxy. But moving along through our notes, Dmail just got added to the EOS Lynx wallet, so you can now send decentralized mail using your mobile phone.
Yeah. So in addition to getting added to EOS Lynx, the actual Dmail beta went live last week as well. So we've just now started onboarding our first couple hundred users onto the platform to get their feedback, determine what features we want to add. And we've already added some cool little, quality of life improvements and UI improvements and bug fixes. There's been a lot going on the platform. But obviously there were thousands and thousands of people that signed up. So we're not going to let them all in at once. We don't want to just, have everybody come in at the same time and find the same bugs and have the same issues. So instead, we're doing sort of a gradual rollout process. But the beta is going very, very well. People that are using it are reporting bugs, giving us great feedback. And it's been great so far. So once you're in the beta, when you have your mail token, send me a message at rob.vr and I'll reply. It's been very cool to use Dmail on the EOS mainnet.
How many beta users are you up to now? Are you guys up to, I should say?
I think we're past, I want to say past 3,000 registrations or close to it. And we've probably sent out about, I'd say 200, maybe 300 invites to people to come and actually use the beta. So we're about 10% through the list right now, and we still have a long way to go. But we're doing it as quickly as possible without degrading the quality of feedback that we get. Because as we've been doing it slowly and sort of having close relationships with the people that we bring into the beta, it's been amazing in keeping the beta feedback high quality and really helping us narrow down bugs and issues instead of having just 1,000 people hit it at once. So it's been awesome.
Yeah, the feedback's been extremely positive, so congratulations on that. And I want to bring this up, even though you already talked about it in another video. You put out a great explainer video like in the last day at the time of this recording for EOS name service, where you really try to onboard new users into EOS by explaining how easy it is to create an account now through EOS name service. A few weeks ago, you added like fiat payments, and we just crossed a major milestone. So if anyone missed this week, the EOS mainnet has just crossed 1 million total unique accounts.
1 million accounts, baby. That's amazing. That's a huge milestone, I gotta say. And the guys over at Defuse at defuse.io, which is one of the best sort of developer tools to query the blockchain, they're actually searching right now. They have a query going that's basically counting from the first account that was created all the way up to the millionth account to see, was that millionth account created by EOS name service? And if not, which account was it? So we're super excited to see the results of that from Defuse.
I just want to congratulate you because I think you and your team that launched EOS name service had a big part in doing this.
Thanks.
Because you made it fun to create names again, create accounts again, because I remember that at the very beginning of the mainnet, but it was like so hard because everything had to be 12 characters. And then this was the first like mainstream within the EOS community service that there was that could give people the human readable account names that they really wanted. They didn't have to put a bunch of ones at the end or do anything silly. It's like you said, rob.vr or eosraider.x or IO. So thank you, Rob. Thanks for your entire team, because 1 million wallets.
That's huge.
That's a huge number.
Yeah, and when we started it, that was really our only goal. Hey, let's make it easier for people to register accounts that they actually want. So instead of getting Rob 111111111, I can get rob.vr like you said. But now that we're doing things like decentralized DNS and eventually decentralized web hosting, those account names are actually potentially decentralized domain names as well. So there's a ton of exciting stuff coming there that will benefit anybody who has an EOS account. So super exciting.
Do we have a timeline on any of that stuff yet?
It'll definitely be this year. So we have a huge amount of features that we have, from the marketplace where you can resell the account names you buy directly on the site, to the DNS, to decentralized web hosting, to a couple other things that we haven't even talked about at all yet. So internally what we're doing now is sort of prioritizing and figuring out, okay, what feature is the most requested, what feature should we build next, and really dive in on. And once we have that down, we hope to give more details to the community.
Things just keep getting better. So we hit 1 million users. Rex passed. Since the last episode, I think when we recorded last week, it needed a couple more votes to pass step 2, which was the last voting requirement to implement the Rex. Unfortunately, there were some issues. It failed to implement twice, right?
Yeah, I believe it was twice. So So this happens occasionally anytime there's a code proposal update. When these things are proposed, the code that goes along with that proposal is actually included as part of the proposal. So once it gets BP approval, 15 out of the top 21 BPs vote, yes, we want this thing in, that code basically can be deployed, I believe by the person who put up the contract or maybe by anybody at that point. But anyway, that code can be deployed to the network, but can't be changed. So if there's a bug in the contract, which in this case there was, you have to do an entire revote and get the approval again because the code has then been updated. So unfortunately, that happened once, the code had a bug, happened again, the code had a different bug, and now it looks like it's been passed a third time, and hopefully this time we'll go through without a hitch. And then I think the third step is just for people to turn on their interfaces. So EOSRex.io, one of the many places that you can go and try out Rex when it's live in hopefully a couple days or hopefully now as you're watching this video.
So it worked on the testnet. The Rex was live on the testnet for weeks, actually, and there weren't any problems. So what probably happened was the code in the proposal was different than the code they used on the testnet?
Well, it's a little bit different. I don't even think the code that was used in the proposal was used on the testnet because the code is basically about implementing it on that network. And I think the mainnet's configured a little bit differently, but I could be wrong there.
So Rex is good to go. It's just a matter of time. It's probably going to be live by the time you're watching this, and if not, a few days later. But beyond that, there's some other really interesting governance stuff going on. So the big talk now is with Rex is what do we do with how much is it, Rob? $100 million worth of EOS and the EOS IO saving account?
Let's check right now, actually. Saving, singular.
So I'll explain
looks like, yeah, as of this moment, and right now it's Wednesday, there's 34,378,000 EOS in this account. So almost 35 million EOS, which is $162 million sitting in the EOS IO saving account. And that is the 4% inflation that's been just kind of accumulating, originally intended for a worker proposal system on-chain, but currently doesn't have a use. So people are kind of trying to decide what to do with it right now. Is that right, Zack?
Yeah, EOS New York, they put out a vote the other day. It got 295 votes. It said, per the EOS user agreement, a non-binding proposal has been made to post a notice of the intention of EOSIO.prods to burn the entirety of EOSIO.saving to EOSIO.forum. So basically, it says here 33 million tokens. It might be a little higher than that now. They just want to completely burn them. And the majority of the people in this vote said 72% of them said good, burn them. 7% said bad, don't burn them. And then 21% said, wait, why burn them? And I think that 21% is why we want to talk about this today.
Yeah. Initially I was in the camp of, hey, let's go ahead and burn them. And I think I might still fall there, but we haven't yet voted for this proposal on-chain as Cypherglass. That the top 30 BPs get to vote on things like this, like Rex, which we were pretty honored to be a part of that vote, at least on the first 2 rounds and obviously with step 1. But we haven't yet voted on this because we really want to hear from you, the people that are voting for us at Cypherglass, the people that are just members of the EOS community out there watching it now. What do you think we should do? Because I think there are benefits to both, right? There are benefits to us going out and burning it and getting rid of that 4% inflation, turning it off, and that gives, investors on maybe the institutional side and even the retail side a little more confidence in the overall system. They go, okay, 1% inflation is good for me. That pays the block producers and keeps the system running. But the total 5% inflation right now is a bit high. So there are definitely economic benefits and potentially token benefits to us removing this and burning that. But on the other hand, maybe there are benefits to having a worker proposal type system or having, user account subsidies or something like that on chain. But the biggest problem with those things and sort of using that money for, ecosystem growth is that it's really hard to allocate that effectively and, prevent abuse of people just voting in their own proposal and collecting a bunch of EOS and just selling it on the open market. So I'm a little undecided and really looking to the community to, sway me in one direction or the other here.
That's funny because we said we weren't going to kind of tell each other our opinions on this before we recorded, and I'm also undecided because I think there are a few legitimate reasons, like for Black Swan events, just to have this fund just in case with the intentions of never touching it unless you absolutely need to. And I can't predict what this event would be that would cause it to be needed. But that would be, I guess, one of the only reasons I could see using it. Like you said, if it needed to be distributed for community like projects or whatever, it's just really hard to decide on how to allocate those funds, and people are just really nitpicky with trusting other people to delegate funds. So it's almost like no one could ever agree on anything.
Right. Well, and to your point, there really is, no way to touch these things right now. It's as if the tokens don't exist right now other than them just being in this account that nobody can control. It would take a 15 out of 21 block producer vote to do something with these tokens. So right now, because they're not connected to anything, because nobody has power over it, it's effectively as if the tokens don't exist. But like you said, could be used in an emergency, if we needed those tokens for something. So it's so interesting.
How about we move on to the next piece of this? Because so that's what to do with the accumulated funds in the saving account.
Right.
But then there's also a proposal that says, and it says, reduce the annual rate of inflation to 1%. So basically, it cuts off the 4% inflation, and it only pays block producers. And this currently has a 99.9% approval rating on the referendum. So with that, the difference here is the first thing we were talking about is all of the old funds that were accumulated, just burn them. And then if you combine these and you also pass the reduce the annual inflation, then that means the EOS IO saving account is basically dead. It will not get any more inflation, and we burned everything saved up in it.
I do think it's important to note, though, that it is possible to just have the, turning it off and reducing the inflation to 1%, but not burning it. So you could still keep the 34 million EOS that are in there now, just in case, until we, decide. But you could turn off the inflation now, which is something that I think, according to this referendum, 99.9% of voters agree with.
I already voted for this one. I'm 100% in favor of reducing the annual inflation to 1%. There's no doubt about that. My thing with the saving is once we burn it, you can't get it back. So I would actually be more in favor of burning like 95% of it or something like that. Just having this little bit there just in case, knowing that no one's probably ever going to touch it or need it, but we just can't predict the future, I guess.
Right.
So there's one aspect that I haven't seen talked about a lot of where this 4% burn, or not the 4%, but the 33 million token burn does affect everybody. And that is with block producer pay. Block producers are currently paid a 1% inflation based on the entire token supply. So by burning 33 million tokens, you're essentially shrinking the supply and lowering the inflation rate for the block producers also.
Yeah, that's something I didn't consider. I mean, it would effectively be, I guess, a 3.5% relative reduction in pay, since it's about 3.5% of the total tokens, maybe a little less. But that is something interesting. I mean, I'm still in favor of reducing it to 1%, even if that change, harms the income we're getting at Cypherglass. But that is an interesting thing to consider.
So I don't know how you did the math in your head like that. I'm terrible at math. So
I was just thinking roughly 35 million tokens out of $1 billion is 3.5%, and because it's 1.035 billion, it's going to be a little less than that, like 3.4, 3.3%. But
so since this needs to pass by a 1521 multi-sig, I don't think that's a big enough change in block producer pay that it would kind of create a reason for someone to not approve it if they're otherwise in favor of it. I don't think the block producer pay will be an issue. What do you think on that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, a 3% temporary reduction essentially is not a huge deal, and just gives people more reason, I think, to go out there and try to get more votes.
We're going to keep going with some governance. We haven't really talked about referendum in a long time. We've been talking about the EOS user agreement, but the thing is, referendum's still very important because we still want to see what the token holders think. So someone else had a proposal for what to do with the EOS IO saving account, and their idea was to spread it out evenly. That is a terrible idea, I think, and there's a reason it's got 97.5% saying no, with almost 10 million votes. I think that's a terrible idea. I don't have it in front of me, but I think it was just proposed by some people in Telegram or Twitter, but they wanted to use EOSIO.saving to kind of pump up the Rex a little bit. So maybe not dump it all in there at once, because then everyone would just get this windfall payment. That doesn't make sense. But maybe slowly start pouring it out into the Rex to kind of give it a kickstart.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'd definitely be interested in listening to that. And that's another big reason why we shouldn't be in a hurry to burn it. So I think just let it go. Cut the inflation down to 1%. Don't touch that big pile of tokens, and then let's give us another couple more months to see what happens with Rex, see what happens in June with Block.One, whatever they're doing, and then we could decide then. I don't see a big hurry to burn this big pile of tokens, but I also don't have a good reason to use them yet either.
Right. I totally agree. And I mean, your point was really spot on in that, once we burn them, you can't go back. You can always burn these again in the future if we say, okay, we definitely want to burn them. There's no use for these, et cetera, et cetera. But you can't go, oh shit, we shouldn't have burned that. We actually needed those. There's no way to unburn them at that point.
Exactly. So I'm in no rush to do this, but I am in favor of rushing to just cut off the inflation. I don't think we need more than 33 million tokens.
Totally agree.
Cutting it off needs to happen. Burning it, I think we should have some long discussion about this and just kind of predict the future of like what is on the short list of potential events that we could consider a black swan event that would cause us to want to use this as an insurance policy almost, if we had like a DAO-like situation, but a little bit different because we're EOS, obviously. And then the other thing is, what if we want to kind of subsidize the Rex a little bit and not like just trickle in a little bit at a time, and then once those 33 million tokens over, like let's say it's a 20-year plan of just trickling them in, and then it cuts off. I don't know. There's just so many options of what to do, and I don't think we've ever actually taken the time to hear people out on some ideas with it. I don't think we should jump into it until we talk about it, and then if we can come to the same agreement, then we'll burn it. I'm in favor of both. I just want to talk about it. Let's talk about it. So the last referendum, we're going long on this governance, man. This is 2 weeks in a row. So we went 2 weeks hard on speculation, and then now we're going 2 weeks hard on governance.
And we have some good speculation coming up, though. So once we get through this last piece.
So the last one is that last week we talked about this proposal by EOS New York about distributing how would you call it with the token, the multi-sig on the token?
Essentially decentralizing the permissions on token contracts. So the smart contracts that govern, dapp tokens or mail tokens for Dmail, decentralizing the control of those so that, only 15 out of 21 block producers can make a change, not just somebody who has one key controlling the entire smart contract.
And as part of that, there is a way for dapps to bid on this special permissions system. Like one per day would be sold in an auction-like system. And then EOS New York proposed that the profits from that, because it's opt-in and not inflationary, would go towards a commons fund for EOS development projects that benefit the entire ecosystem. That is on the referendum today. And after 9.7 million votes, it's 100% voting yes in favor of that.
Wow.
So that's really cool. But as far as the part where this money comes from, which is that auctioning system, EOS DAC put out a Steemit article where they basically explained how DAC-like security permissions could solve the problem in the same or a better way than 15 out of 21 block producers. And then Colin Talks Crypto, if you follow his YouTube channel, he put out a 3-part series that was all about decentralizing smart contracts.
Yeah.
So I think the big thing that everyone could agree on is smart contracts, especially from widely used dapps and their token contracts, should absolutely not be controlled by a single private key. It should either be done by like a board or a DAC or 15 out of the 21 block producers, but you shouldn't ever put all of the control of basically the entire DApp and the token in one person, not one person's hand, but one entity's hand, entity's hands, one key that could potentially, something could happen and it's game over after that. So I think that's where everyone could agree.
Well, and I think that's part of decentralizing the control of these token contracts is decentralizing decentralizing the amount of solutions that you have to decentralize those contracts. So it shouldn't just be, hey, here's one solution, everybody has to use it, everybody has to use block producers, or everybody has to use DAC or multi-sig. The beauty of this is that people can kind of pick and choose what they believe is right for them based on the level of immutability they want. So Dan made an interesting point in Telegram recently that, both mutable and immutable smart contracts have their own sets of pros and cons, their own sets of trade-offs. If you look at something like the DAO hack on Ethereum, where the fact that this contract was immutable and could not be changed, you can't update it, you can't pause it, you can't stop it, you can't do anything, that was detrimental to that overall ecosystem and to Ethereum as a whole. It resulted in the Ethereum Classic hard fork and so much more. But there are also cons to having mutable contracts that can be changed or can be updated, in that if there is a bad actor, maybe a hacker comes in, and if you only have one key securing that contract, they could, print new tokens or update token balances and do a bunch of bad stuff that you don't want them doing. So both have their set of trade-offs, and by having a bunch of different solutions, we can sort of give developers a spectrum from totally mutable to totally immutable and let them pick where they want to go. So I think that is awesome and should make the ecosystem more secure and better as a result.
Yeah, so you mentioned the DAO hack, but was it Polkadot? Isn't there like a pretty big Ethereum project that has like several $1 million locked up because I forget what happened.
It might have been Polkadot, but there was the parity wallet hack with multi-sig where a bunch of people got locked out.
That was what I was thinking.
Tens of millions of dollars, I believe it was. There have been a lot of issues with totally mutable smart contracts on Ethereum that have, totally immutable, meaning they cannot be changed, because you can't make something on Ethereum that can be updated without building it in a really hacky way. But there are a lot of problems with that. So there are benefits to both, and it'll be interesting to see what developers choose for their applications and for their token contracts.
So I think the parity wallet hack is a good example of how that would be different on EOS if EOS New York, if their proposal passed and everyone agreed on it, and if they won the daily auction and they had their contract decentralized amongst the 21 active block producers. I think Parity is a pretty reputable project. It has some of the smartest people in the Ethereum community on it. So I don't think anyone would doubt their integrity, but they just had an unfortunate situation happen. So if this were on EOS, and if EOS New York's proposal passed, or if the project used like a DAC-like functionality on a multi-sig, then there would be a way to retrieve these tens of millions of dollars of tokens, which right now they're all just locked up.
We should also note that even if they didn't do any of that and they only built it on EOS, things like the DAO and things like the parity hack wouldn't have happened either, or at least would have been severely mitigated in terms of damage. Because once you saw, oh wow, someone is exploiting a replay loop to just drain this giant DAO fund of all of its money over and over again, you could hit pause on the smart contract or clear it out, and then they would no longer be able to do that. You could figure out how they were exploiting that replay loop, push a bug fix, and then the whole thing would continue, and you wouldn't have had to hard fork the entire Ethereum network just for what was effectively one dapp that had a bug in their code. So EOS is superior in a lot of ways that, if you're building a website, you don't just deploy a website and go, well, that's it, I'm never going to make a change again. That's it, that's my website forever. But that's how it is on Ethereum with a smart contract. So with EOS, it's more of the traditional development mindset that, hey, you're going to deploy something as a business or as someone just building a contract for fun, and you're going to want to update it and improve it over time. And that's one of the aspects of EOS from a developer's perspective that I just love so much, and I think gives us a huge advantage in terms of easy developer onboarding and app updates as time goes on.
Amen. So speaking of user onboarding, and we were just talking about EOS New York, so we talked about they have their transit API, which we've mentioned before, which is the way they describe it is how it helps user onboarding, makes it easier for dApps to integrate with all of the different wallets. And it seems like they have a product that they have to naturally pair with the transit API. And you saw an early example of it at the last EOS New York meetup, but the images are finally live. They posted a blog article about it. The EOS Metro wallet is coming soon. So there's still very little information about it. Besides, I'm just happy to see what it looks like. We'll have a picture on the screen. It looks like a little USB stick. And on the website, it says that, so I have, I guess, some critiques about it just initially, and it's probably because there's not a lot of information out. But Kevin Rose, you could always message me, come into Everything EOS channel and explain the whole situation. So the first thing is on the website, it says it's good for mobile or desktop. And I just have questions about, I guess, how a USB drive, hardware drive, would be used on a cell phone. As far as Rob, do you know if it has like a Bluetooth or anything or an NFC?
I don't. I didn't see that listed in the specs, but it is possible, I guess, that it has Bluetooth, and that's how they communicate with your phone, similar to the Ledger Nano X that I guess just got delayed, actually. So it is technically possible, but Kevin, maybe you can help us clarify. But something that's good I should mention also, Kevin said he will send us one of these units so that we can do an exclusive review and an exclusive preview, really get those questions answered. So we will have one of the first EOS Metros here on the show once Kevin is ready to send it over to us. And we'll show everybody what it's all about and hopefully get everybody's questions answered.
I'm excited. First thing I'm going to try to do is try to connect it on wirelessly. Yeah,
exactly.
I guess they
That'll
just
be
need to
step
tell
number
us that
one.
it has that on there. Maybe just throw it on their specs on their website. But I just
Right.
don't know how you could otherwise use it with mobile, and that's kind of my questions. And then the other thing, and a lot of people in our channel had the same questions. They asked Kevin directly. It doesn't have a screen, so whenever you're typing in your PIN, you can't really you don't see what you're typing. I'm sure they have a solution. I'm sure this wasn't lost on them. So I just want to hear more about how that works and how the pins are entered and validated and things like that. But I'm excited to see this. I got a EOS hardware wallet also. I actually haven't.
Oh, nice.
I haven't used it yet, and I don't know if I'm going to use it with like any of my main wallets. And that's another thing I want to bring up is like EOS New York, incredible trust. You can't have more trust on the EOS mainnet than for EOS New York. EOS, you're doing good stuff, but I think they've kind of had a little bit of negative publicity in the past. Well, how do you feel about these independent wallets that they have a reputation as block producers, but like when ledgers first came out, people probably didn't trust them right away, and over time, like it's all open source code, I guess too, but you could still have hardware attacks. How do you feel about all these not off-brand because they're name brand than EOS, but like all these different independent hardware producers who aren't experts in hardware?
You know, ultimately, I think it is a very good thing because just like we were talking about the decentralization, the diversity of options for a developer to decentralize their token contract, I think we need the same thing with hardware wallets, from a security point of view, so that if one does get attacked, it doesn't affect every single person that's, storing their coins on that hardware wallet. But so I think it's a good thing, more choice, more options for users. But to your point, I mean, I do agree that their biggest hurdle is going to be convincing users to trust them. You may trust somebody as a block producer, but it's another thing to trust, storing a significant amount of money on a hardware product that person manufactured. So, obviously we know EOS New York and EOS don't have malicious intent. We can sort of assume these things are safe, but even still, because they're not on that ledger brand or on that Trezor status, it's going to take a little while for users to trust it. Do I think it's impossible? Absolutely not. I think there will be a ton of people using, both EOS's memory box, which I think is pretty cool, and then the Metro from EOS New York. There's been a lot of interest there as well. So I think it's a good thing, and just kind of let the users decide. The more choice that users have, the better.
So the EOS wallet, they did have a wireless Bluetooth on there. I'm pretty sure. I'm almost positive of it. So
nice. Yeah, I've seen I haven't seen one in person, but I have seen a demo that looks cool where you sort of link it to the EOS app and you store all of your accounts on that memory box, sort of linked to your phone. But then if you switch phones or want to use it on your computer, you can use that same memory box and it kind of transfers, which I thought was neat.
So thanks, EOS. I didn't want to kind of start any FUD or anything. I know it's a very talented team. I just wanted to point out that there was some controversy in the past, and that's out in the open. Everyone knows about that. So I'm excited about the hardware wallets, and to go along with that, as far as trust, if we go back to the EOS IO Labs article about passwords, as far as your authentications, the lump sum of your funds, like whatever you want to consider your personal crypto savings account, no single dapp should ever have access to that. It should always be done on a multi-sig. So if you think of it like that, then you could probably trust all of these independent hardware wallets if you only give them limited permissions. With like specific dapps or with specific EOS accounts. So I guess there's really not a big issue then with that.
Yeah, I mean, and that is one of the cool things about EOS, and part of the reason we made EOS name service. I have a bunch of different EOS accounts, for different things. Some for playing dapps, where I just keep a little bit of money. Some for storing tokens long term, where I keep a lot of money. Some that are, kind of fall in between for various purposes. But if you have all of your EOS in one account, it may be time to get another account. Head over to eosnameservice.io is a perfect one. But it may be, seriously, from a security perspective, so that you can have an account that you use and you play in dapps. Especially if you're importing a private key into a dapp, you really shouldn't keep a lot of EOS and other tokens there. Just keep those in your main account and then have one that you use to interact and sort of be a little more risky from a security perspective.
All right. I think it's time to move on to something fun. We've talked governance.
Yeah.
We've talked voting. We've talked hardware and security.
Yep.
I think we need to talk about Dan on Telegram. We haven't talked about Dan on Telegram in a while. Not since the original B1 June and emojis. We haven't talked about Dan on Telegram. Last night, Tuesday night, Dan said one of the coolest things I've ever seen him say, or read him say. Someone asked, I don't have their name in front of it, I'm sorry. Someone asked him, I think it was Tequila, maybe. I'd love to see you interviewed on everything EOS.
Ooh.
And Dan's response, I'll think about it.
Hey! Hey, my boy Dan, coming
so he's
through.
saying there's a chance.
Yep, absolutely. I'm hoping, obviously we had Brendan commit to coming on Everything EOS in the past. I'm hoping that maybe we can get Brendan and Dan on Everything EOS in June. Maybe it'll happen.
Maybe it will. So speaking of June, so a little bit of a bummer news about the June 1st event. So the great news is it will be live streamed on a bit of a delay.
Yeah.
But the bad news is that everyone can't come who wants to come because Dan clarified on Telegram that it will be invite only. But we will be there. So we will still be there. And like we said, we hope to be able to run into Dan and Brendan there. We'll let you guys know when we have the information ourselves.
Definitely.
But so this is the Block.One June stuff. So invite only. And another thing he said was 1.8 release candidate coming soon.
Nice.
So I'm excited for that. And he said a few weeks ago that we'd be getting regular updates leading up to June 1st, that June 1st is the main event. But every couple weeks, I was expecting updates every week. I was being too bullish on that, but it's been a couple weeks now since we've had a big update. So I'm looking forward to 1.8 and what it has in there.
One feature that I'm hoping comes, obviously more multi-threading of different parts of the transaction processing stack, if you want to call it that. So different things are already, running on a multi-threaded process, like signature validation on chain. That was about 50% of the time it took to process a transaction was just validating, hey, was this signed by the proper key with the proper authority, et cetera, et cetera. They have the authority to send this transaction. So that's on I believe now you can run that parallel in a multi-threaded state in some way that gives you a performance boost, but other parts of, EOS are being multi-threaded over time and sort of given that compatibility so that we can scale the chain even further. So I'm hoping for that, but I'm also hoping for, similar to the Dunya Labs Eclipse solution, where you can sort of auto-delegate CPU to users as they're using your account. Block.One, or as they're using your dapp rather, Block.One had talked about actually releasing something into the core EOS IO code that would allow dapp developers to just automatically pay for CPU on behalf of a user. So integrating that a little bit more, giving people more options into how they delegate CPU and really integrating it in that way, I think would be awesome. So that's something I'm hoping to see in 1.8 or maybe in a 2.0 release if Block.One surprises us with a big 2.0 on June 1st, because they did say announcements and updates, and I'm really hoping those updates are EOS IO updates that will, blow some people out of the water.
This is the first I've ever heard that. So
really?
Let me get to my speculation. My only speculation is that there's going to be some performance upgrades, and they're probably going to have some bug fixes. I think that's the obvious. I hope we get at least one surprise of some feature that we may have forgot about, such as the one Rob described. But you're right. If they release 1.8 like in the next couple days or week even, then the next one's 1.9 potentially. Well, and then after that, it's 2. It's really not a big deal, like their release numbers, but like to go with their big announcements, I mean, it is publicity at the end of the day. Coming out with 2.0 at the second year anniversary, if you think of these numbers, year 1 was the end of the ICO and the launch of the mainnet. Year 2 is B1 June. So it makes sense to me that we'll see 2.0. So that means we should get at least one more release candidate upgrade between now and then. I guess we'll get 2 updates if 1.8 is not out by the time this airs.
Well, and remember, with software, I mean, they don't have to go from 1.8 to 1.9 to then 2. They could jump from 1.8 to 2. So even if 1.8 comes out a little later or we don't see a 1.9, it doesn't mean we won't get or can't get a 2.0. But also keep in mind what Brendan Bloomer has said, the CEO of Block.One. He has come out and said, hey, we're starting our annualized product release cycle in June. What is the biggest product that Block.One has right now? It's EOS IO. That's it. That's the software that powers the EOS mainnet, that's going to power enterprise, private chain, so much more. That is their biggest product. It would only make sense that the next greatest version of it, EOS IO 2.0, comes out in June. So that's what I'm really hoping for ultimately overall. I think the products, whatever we might get from them, will just sort of be icing on the cake and, really great for everybody that maybe doesn't understand the technical side. But from a block producer's perspective, I am super excited for 2.0 and what that might bring.
It's so funny. I don't think people are going to get as hyped about this speculation as some of the other stuff. It's like, yeah, 2.0. What's that mean?
Exactly. People are like, well, how does that affect me? It should be great new features, performance updates, stuff that is just great for the chain and developers
And
overall.
Usually whenever you roll over a number, like a non-decimal number, usually there are major upgrades involved. So
exactly.
That's the exciting part. The number is kind of irrelevant. It's just what kind of you could assume will happen with that number. Anytime there's a rollover to a non-decimal number, it's a big, big update. So
Definitely. Well, and even on smaller things, to quantify it, when we get like a 1.7.5 upgrade, that's much less significant than, say, a 1.7 to 1.8 upgrade. And similarly, that's less significant than a 1 point whatever to 2.0 or 2.x to 3.0. So it really would be a huge jump and hopefully have significant features. So we'll see. Only time will tell. But we're 4 or 5 weeks away now from June 1st. It's sneaking up on us here.
Mm-hmm. So I guess. What do you think the for sure things are? I think 2.0 is for sure. We just don't know what that actually means. I think MEOS is in the bag. We know what MEOS is. But I guess we don't know what MEOS is. Do you think MEOS will be like a website, a protocol, or something bigger? And I want to hear the thing you predicted earlier before we started recording.
I think it could be all of the above, and I think there have been a lot of interesting rumors that I've kind of heard about it maybe being a browser. And obviously, people hear browser like, wait a minute, like a web browser, like a mobile or a desktop web browser. I think that actually makes sense when we unpack that idea a little bit. Obviously we have decentralized DNS coming with EOS name service. That would be much easier to integrate if we had a browser specifically for this stuff. It's obviously possible in Google Chrome and Safari and everything as well, but to have our own EOS browser would be pretty incredible. And then if you think, okay, identity and accounts. Right now in Google Chrome, I have identity and accounts. I log in with my Gmail account. That's what syncs me between all my browsers. But imagine having a crypto wallet built into that where I can send tokens to people automatically, sort of like you have Scatter built into your browser once you install it. Or I guess you did in the old version before they switched to desktop. This would kind of be an all-in-one package for everything EOS, for everything you needed to do on EOS, whether it was storing tokens or making a new account or hosting a decentralized website. It could all kind of be done in there. So that's, I heard a little whisper of, hey, maybe it's a browser, just somebody sort of talking about it, speculating. And then I took that idea in my mind and started thinking, wow, imagine all the things they could do with a browser and imagine how much sense that would make. So that's what I'm really hoping it is, especially thinking about the decentralized web hosting that we're coming out with. But only time will tell. It could be so many different things. It could be all of these things we're talking about. It could be none of them and something we haven't even thought of. And that, I think, is what is so exciting about B1 June.
So you mentioned this right before we recorded, and I immediately jumped to Google because I just thought backwards to whenever we mentioned the trademarks for MEOS and the descriptions and statements for their goods and services. And I'll just read the first two sentences here. Computer application software for embedding a web browser, interfacing with secure hardware key storage, and executing proposed transactions via the blockchain. So, maybe not, but it would make sense, right? Because if it's an app like Facebook, just something better and different, for user adoption and onboarding, they still have to download an app. So no matter what, there's going to be that point of friction of how do I get people to download this app? And then we speculated before that it's possible that they will distribute ad revenue earned through this software to all of the users on the software, and that would be somewhat like a UBI or a revenue share. And if you wanted to advertise on a platform like this, the companies wanting to run their ads would most likely need to buy whatever token MEOS is running on, and then they would spend those in like for the ad network. So what better way to collect a lot of data on a user if it's opt-in? And that'd be the important piece here, is that if you opt out, you have like cryptographic proof and your permission keys, your data is not really going where it shouldn't be. But if it's opt-in, then you could do that and share all kinds of browser data. So you were kind of explaining to me earlier before we started recording about the Brave browser. Do you want to kind of just give a high level of what that is?
So Brave is a browser from one of the creators of Firefox, Brendan Eich, great guy. They did a whole ICO on Ethereum in 2017, I believe it was, for basic attention token. And essentially what their whole platform, the initial premise of Brave was as you're using websites from independent publishers, or maybe you're on everythingeos.io watching one of our videos, you could sort of send little crypto micropayments to those publishers or those content creators to kind of thank them for what they were doing. There was also incorporation of their attention token, which was a pretty interesting concept. And what I'm thinking is maybe that aspect would be built into this as well. We know that Dan and Brendan have talked about, hey, UBI may be incorporated in one of our products, one of their first software products that they come out with. Maybe if that is the browser, there will be something where, whether you're selling your data or just getting paid through a UBI to use that browser, that it'll be incentivized in some way. Because obviously, Chrome is something that I live in daily. Like, there are little intricacies of Chrome, little shortcuts, things that I love about Chrome, and it will be very hard for the average user who's not just using it to get those extra EOS account functionalities, but for the average person to say, hey, let me use this entirely different browser. So if they say, hey, you're going to get paid every month or every week for using this browser, I think a lot more people would join it, and maybe we will see the UBI card pulled out for that, so to speak.
So I'm trying to conceptualize what this would be like, because I haven't put much thought in it, and I don't know if it is a browser or not a browser. But could you imagine if whenever you're on a website and you see a banner ad because you opted in for ads, if that would add like a fraction of a penny to your EOS account because that ad got shown?
Yeah.
So you would be like incentivized to browse the web, but there'd be like an attack vector. How do you prevent bots from doing that? Well, you have a secure identity solution, and that's how you'd prevent that. So
exactly.
It sounds like there's something that could happen, whether it's Block.One or someone else or something in the future and not for June. This sounds like something reasonable, I think.
Definitely. And I should clarify also, everything we're talking about here is pure speculation, just kind of going off of different quotes. I wish, and I get asked this a lot, Rob, do you know what's coming in B1 June? Like, are you just not telling us? I wish I knew it was coming. I really do. But this is just speculation because we're so excited about it. And just, because Block.One is thinking so big, the possibilities here are so broad. It could be a browser, it could be a social media network, it could just be a wallet, it could be open source code for people to launch one or all of those things. So it's just so exciting, to put on the speculation hat and think, what could it really be coming in June? Because the implications of what they're going to release, I think, are going to be huge. So I'm just excited about it, but I do need to clarify, it's just speculation going off a couple comments.
So let's go back. So April 20th, Dan gave some notable quotes about some of their upcoming solutions. And one of the quotes was, "Our wallet is more of a password manager that will sign transactions after rendering a proper Ricardian contract rather than anything app specific." So that could tie into a browser. So you mentioned Chrome. It's what most of us use. And I have all of my passwords. It's basically a password manager in Chrome. If you had my Google account information, and I have 2FA and all kinds of stuff, so don't even try it, then you could essentially have access to all of my passwords just by having that one password. So it's essentially a password manager. So if Google were to be hacked and not be up to par on security, I hope they are. And like I said, I have all the double, triple authenticators. But with just that one password, you could have access to everything. And it's kind of like with Scatter. You have your master password and then all of your linked accounts in there. Like that's a big responsibility to give to any centralized application. So they keep talking password managers. He's describing this wallet where it doesn't really have to do with tokens, but it's more of like signing transactions. I think the other interesting piece of this is that he confirmed that they have a wallet. So we thought the Block.One wallet was getting open sourced because different pieces of it are and how it was communicated. But now it sounds like Block.One will also have a wallet. It's just different than what any of us were expecting.
Yeah, well, and if you look back at that original EOS IO Labs announcement, it said Block.One will not be launching a wallet at this time. So it didn't say they weren't going to launch whenever, just said at that time of the EOS IO Labs release, they weren't going to launch one. So maybe in June we will still get that wallet. I think, I hadn't seen this quote from Dan back on April 20th, but that really does sort of add a little bit more fuel to the fires of, is it a browser, that whole conversation. Because a password manager does make a ton of sense going in with that identity layer and so much more built into that browser experience. So maybe it's all shaping together.
It would make sense why they did that Ricardian contract update with the standardization, because within the browser, you have to see the human readable text of what every function that you're signing or every transaction you're signing is actually doing. That's
something I think is just so cool. Like, everybody knows now if you've signed a transaction with Scatter, you see the pop-up, you get some kind of, you get the actual, function or whatever it is in the code, like update auth, which is one you should watch out for, or, transfer to transfer a token. You see that, but it really doesn't, tell you explicitly what it's going to do. But with the Ricardian contract update that I think was in the last version of EOS IO 1.7 point something, you can basically add as a developer, hey, this contract will transfer a token to this, or this contract will give you an entry ticket to this game, or whatever it may be, just to make it easier for you, the user, to understand what's going on when you send a transaction. So that, just from a user experience perspective and a mainstream onboarding perspective, really does make a ton of sense and is something that is necessary.
So MEOS is a browser, or it's just something really cool, and it does everything we say it will, as far as like some sort of distribution of ad revenue for opted-in ads. If this all happened and you got paid to use it, but it required a KYC, how would you feel about it? Because at the EOS Expo, a few people that I trust, that I don't know if they heard firsthand or not, but it was mentioned that they're like 99.9% sure that there's a KYC component involved with it.
It depends on the level of KYC. Is it government KYC where I have to do like a Coinbase verification with my face and my ID, or is it like linking Telegram and verifying my phone number? There's a sort of a wide spectrum of what KYC actually could be, but it also doesn't surprise me at all, especially if Block.One is going to be redistributing ad revenue to people. You know, when you're in the US, and I can imagine they want to capture the US market, moving to DC and potentially opening a campus there. All of that's going on. They don't just want to exclude the US like they did in the token sale. They really want to embrace that market because it is a massive market and a place where so much internet innovation has been happening over the last 20 years. So with all of that in mind, if a company like Block.One that has this giant legal team, that's really trying to do stuff by the book, if they're going to be sending out payments to people, you can bet that it's going to be, KYC. They're going to want your tax information so that if they pay you more than $600 in the US, you have to pay taxes and it gets reported. So it doesn't surprise me at all that there will be a KYC component, but I'll be very curious to see, through what method do they implement that KYC? Like I said, is it, social network link? Is it a driver's license, or is it something else that maybe we haven't thought of?
So like a few hours after I heard from a few people that this might be the case with MEOS, I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. It's another layer of friction. People won't want to do it. And then I got to thinking that maybe it's not such a big deal. And then I went and rented a scooter in San Francisco, and I had to use an app to do it. And sure enough, it made me take a picture of my driver's license. So I basically, and it wasn't a big deal at all. And there were hundreds of people riding these electric scooters all over town, and rented bikes. So I don't think that would be a big deal. I think in the environment we're in the crypto ecosystem, people are very private about things, and they tend to not always want to give up their identity unless they have to, with a Coinbase account or something, for example. But I don't think for your average person, if they're basically told, here's a new social media platform, you'll get paid for all the browsing you do in this browser, if it's a browser, or from just what you post and get likes on in social media. I think that's enough incentive that if you got to take a picture of your driver's license, that it's not going to slow a single, yes, but it's not going to slow down a lot of people.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think for the average person, it really won't be a hindrance for them, adopting and using the app. And keep in mind also, just like, the scooter app, the first thing you really have to do is take a photo of your license before you can jump on the scooter. But with an app like this, KYC could be at a much further end of the process or of the user funnel where, you can log on, you can use the app, you can even accrue value in the app, but then maybe when you want to withdraw that value to your own account or, spend it in some way, then you get the KYC process. So okay, I want to unlock my $20, I got to give them the KYC, and then I'm, free flowing from here. So I think it could be done in a way that doesn't really disrupt the user acquisition process.
Can't argue with that. Is there anything else we want to cover with the Dan quotes, or do we want to move on to the last topic here?
I think we can move on. There's some exciting stuff happening.
So I am not 100% on how this stuff works, but there was a big announcement over the last couple of days that a sovereign nation called Liberland announced that they're basically going to run their entire government regulations and currencies all on an EOS IO blockchain.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. I've seen stuff like this in the past, especially there was one called BitNation or something a few years ago. And this Liberland, it says the country was founded with global recognition April 13th, 2015. So I don't really understand how you could run everything on a blockchain if you're a government, but I do like that they did their due diligence, researched all of the other products on the market, and they chose EOS IO.
Yeah.
So that I can understand.
There's a great quote that I would love to read, and this is coming from the president of Liberland, who has her name is Vit Jedlicka, I believe. Anyway.
I think it's a guy.
Oh, it's a guy. Anyway, the Liberland president says, "We have chosen EOS IO because it's a top-rated technology and it provides a lot of the features necessary to run country management." Yes, country management on a blockchain. For example, it will allow us to have our National Assembly, judiciary, and even company registrations in one integrated system that can evolve over time. So they're really doing some big things with this, and I bet both Dan and Brendan are super excited about this because, you know, government has been a hot topic lately, especially with the whole DC event and everything coming up.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the way we describe the purpose of a sister chain compared to like the EOS mainnet is. It's meant to kind of innovate and do things that like governance models that we can't do on the mainnet, or it's just risky because it's unproven. So if we want in the next 20 to 50, even 100 years to have this just be the norm of basically government as a service on a software platform, like you're not going to just have a big country like the United States or like the United Kingdom do it. Like it's going to take a little like tiny nation like this to really try to innovate it. And I compare it to the crypto regulations in the country of Malta. Malta is one of the smallest countries in Europe, but they have some of the best blockchain regulation in the world, or most favorable, I should say. And the reason is because it's easier to convince a small group. It's easier to govern a smaller group of people than trying to govern a worldwide, like EOS mainnet, for example. You could accomplish a lot more with this small group. I think this country is only like a few miles in size.
2 square miles, I think, yeah.
So it's not that far off. And like if we want to have, we talked a few weeks ago about having a parallel government election. Well, this country could do a real government election. They don't even got to worry about trying it on parallel first. They could just run it on EOS IO the first year it's available to do so. So I'm excited to watch this, not because I necessarily want to be part of it or I want to move there. I just want to see the different ways that they innovate. And if they're going to do like land registrations, for example, they might only have 2 miles of land, but if they have code that actually does that, it's going to be a lot easier to like point of this as a proof of concept to a larger nation to say, look, we've got the open source code to do this. Here's a use case. It was successful. They saved this much percentage on like administration costs, and it's completely transparent and everyone likes it. So I can't wait to see what the, I guess, next couple years bring, because I don't expect something like this to just pop up overnight. The announcement might have popped up overnight, but I don't see the implementation happening real soon.
I think you're right in terms of it really takes smaller countries to innovate faster and sort of provide a testing ground or a use case for bigger countries like the US to potentially actually onboard something like this someday. So things like the parallel election instead of doing the real election first, and things like Liberland, you know, implementing this, or maybe somebody like Estonia that has a digital ID system moving to a blockchain like EOS in the future. All of that will be great examples to then go to the US regulators like Block.One is doing so hard in DC and say, hey, you know, here's an example of all of the performance improvements or the, you know, elimination of fraud that that Liberland or Estonia had in their election using this technology. You can now use that on maybe a state scale or a parallel election scale, and then actually slowly grow it to the real thing where real government infrastructure in the US and so many other countries is run on EOS IO software. So it's just so cool. I mean, the more transparent government could be, the better. And then we wouldn't have things like the IRS losing $1 trillion and then losing another $1 trillion and saying, oh, sorry, we don't know where it went. We would be able to track all of that on a system that was transparent and open like a blockchain. So let's hope it happens.
So we have 2 more points about Liberland, and we've already talked a long time, so we should be brief on it. So the first thing that was cool is Ron Paul is a citizen of Liberland. So nice. I saw it on their Twitter. It was from February 2018 at Acapulco. Ron Paul got his passport for Liberland, so he is an official citizen. So that's cool because Dr. Ron Paul is like a hero to many people in cryptocurrency. I know Dan looks up to him. I know a lot of people that were at Acapulco. It was basically a crypto meetup for a lot of people. So that was pretty cool to see a big name like him be part of this. But the most interesting thing about all of this was who is advising Liberland on the EOS IO. And it was a team called Ghostbusters. You got to consider, if they're going to build their entire government on EOS IO, they're going to need some EOS IO experts to do it. And who are these experts is my question, because all I could find on them is that their name is Ghostbusters and a few projects, a lot of projects that they've been working on. But let me just read what the advisory role for Ghostbusters for Liberland entails. And it says, quote, Liberland is building its whole fundamentals on blockchain, the backbone of the country. And that's where the Ghostbusters come in. Functions and tools such as voting, government expenditures, passports, and company registry will be run on the blockchain. Of course, without risking the privacy of the citizens. For Liberland, blockchain is not just a nice to have, it's a must have. It avoids seeing history repeat itself when it comes to corruption or unfair treatment, but also efficiency gains that come with fully digitized systems. Our work here could provide insight on how other countries can apply blockchain in the future and benefit of our system. So I'm not actually looking at a screenshot here. I had like the text typed out. So they said that's where Ghostbusters come in, and they went into it. And they had a link. So Ghostbusters has a website, ghostbustersx.io, and they call themselves, "We are an independent tech collective that believes in a decentralized future." Ghostbusters started their collaboration on EOS IO's first community testnet. And this is, I guess I just validated what I thought. There was a testnet before mainnet launch, right? That was called Ghostbusters.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Because we had Jungle and Ghostbusters, and I think there was even one more.
Yeah, so this website doesn't say which teams are involved with that. And EOS Writer is actually the reason I was so confused on these Ghostbusters, because he's like, you know most things. Who are these Ghostbusters? And I was like, well, that was the name of testnet before the mainnet, but I don't think it was the same people. And in my mind, I thought it wasn't the same people, but I just read the quote and I caught myself. So that was the first thing they did, was they launched the first community testnet, this group of people who are Ghostbusters. And then it says, after that, team members realized they had cultural alignment, sharing common values, and working towards a higher purpose. Since the mainnet launched, the collaboration and teamwork between the collective just got stronger. And they have a list of projects that they're advising or are building themselves. And I'll read off the list. Liberland's DAG, which is what we were just talking about, Simplios, Shintai, Hyperion, EOS DAC, EOS Infra, EOS Test Cave, never heard of that, Superheroes, and EOS Node Tools. I haven't heard of all of those, but the ones I have heard of are some pretty major projects. So my question to you guys, my audience, who are these Ghostbusters? What block producer teams are they? What individuals are on this team? Because it sounds like they're doing some really big stuff, and they're kind of like a dream team here for EOS IO. So stake your claim. They don't even have a Telegram, or they don't even have a Twitter.
Wow.
So
it's so cool. I mean, props to you on finding this Ghostbustersx.io, or was it Kenny from EOS Writer?
Shout out to Kenny from EOS Writer. Yeah. EOS Writer.
Shout out to Kenny for sure. It's pretty cool. I mean, when you think about everything that's happening on EOS, it's so easy to just think, all of the news and announcements that I see on like the Cypherclash channel or here on Everything EOS, that's everything that's happening, or the stuff you read on Twitter. But there's so much stuff happening behind the scenes, and it's something I try to really, tell people, like there's so much happening behind the scenes, whether it's developers moving from other platforms to EOS, or building new projects on a blockchain for the first time and choosing EOS, or even setting up collectives like this to help small countries do experiments where they run their entire government on EOS IO. So there's so much happening on EOS and the broader EOS IO ecosystem. It's really kind of mind-boggling sometimes to think about it, but just so cool to see another team out there doing good work for the overall community.
I just thought of a song in my head. You know the Ghostbusters song where it's like something strange in the neighborhood. So it's like something strange. I don't know. I don't know the song, but basically, who are you gonna call? Ghostbusters. So if you want to build a country on EOS IO, who are you gonna call? Ghostbusters.
I love it. They have that on their website. It says hashtag who are you gonna call?
I love this. Who are these people? Like, let us know. I want to talk to you guys, because I probably talked to some of you guys. I've just never known about this collective, and I want to hear more about it, because these are some really interesting projects, and I especially want to know more about these government services that you're building for Liberland, because then I'm going to speculate it on and try to figure out if it's Block.One doing similar stuff for our government. But this is completely separate. But I think that's a good time to sign off. We're well over an hour on the pre-edited version of this. So you have anything else you want to add here, Rob?
Only other thing I will say is head over to eosnameservice.io, see all the new names we've added. We now have the PayPal option. If you haven't gotten your EOS account, or you want to get a couple more for security, split up your EOS wallets, eosnameservice.io, or the link in the description will get you 5% off. But other than that, obviously, go EOS.
We're not going to say I'm Zack Gall, and then you're going to say I'm Rob Finch.
Of course. But I never get tired of saying go EOS.
All right, so until next week, I will see you guys soon. I'm Zack Gall.
I'm Rob Finch.
And this
is Everything EOS.
Is Everything EOS.
Go EOS!
Go EOS! We'll see if that works. Woo!
See you next week, folks.
All right.
Cool.
All right.